Hi, and welcome to Shadows and Secrets Deep Dive series. I'm Kerry Savage.
And I am Samantha Skal. Together, we are Shadows and Secrets, a series of retreats in an online community for mystery, thriller, and horror authors.
Find out more on shadowsandsecrets.com.
We are both book coaches and authors, and we love talking about story. This is our series of spoiler alerts, deep dives into scary books that we love, where we talk about twists, structure, masterful misdirection, villains, and anything else that strikes our fancy about MTS, which is the overarching genre term for mystery, thriller, and suspense. But before we get into it, I'd like to introduce my co-founder of Shadows and Secrets, Carrie.
Thank you, Sam. Hi, everybody. I am a writer and a book coach who loves working with writers to make their fictional ideas come to life. And I am super into immersive settings and details that really pull you into a book's world. Now, tell the people a little more about you, Sam.
Oh, thank you so much. I love working with thriller, mystery, suspense, and horror authors to plan and write twisty novels, and I especially love brainstorming twists and villains. The darker, the better.
Amazing. So, just another reminder, as Sam said, we are giving everything away in these discussions, including key plot points. So, if you haven't read today's book, please hit pause, go read it, and then come back.
Seriously, we're going to leave no secrets unturned, so consider this your final spoiler alert warning. The structure of these talks is the same every time. We're going to read the book jacket copy and what the author has done to manipulate us before we even start.
And then we'll read the first page and talk about what the author has done to manipulate us there.
Excellent. And then we're going to break down each of the major twists in terms of how the author did it, what percentage of the way through it happened, and what the on-screen clues were so that the twist worked.
And we're also going to talk about how the author accomplished the overall misdirection and manipulation of the reader, and the way that the author used language or setting or other elements that I love to set the reader up for maximum fear.
Which is why we like to read scary books. We like to be scared.
Hell yes. All right. Are we ready?
We sure are. So today's book is You Are Fatally Invited by Ande Pliego, whom Carrie and I had the honor of getting to meet last week at Thriller Fest in real life. She is a delight. And if you don't follow her on Instagram, please do. She has some really cool posts up about the writing process and how she got her book deal. And she's just is a really lovely person. So excited to dive into this one. Carrie, do you have the book jacket pulled up or do you want me to find that?
I don't have it pulled up, but I can get there hopefully in 1 second.
Alrighty. So
Um,
while she's
Here
doing
we go.
that, do you have it?
I do. This is the
Excellent.
Amazon. Like I was, since I just held up my iPad, you can probably guess this is the Kindle version, but I think they're generally the same, aren't they?
Pretty much the same, yeah.
Okay. So I will take us through that if you like.
Please do.
All
Yeah.
right. So when renowned anonymous author J.R. Alstor hires former aspiring writer Mila, Mila de Angel, sorry, I butchered that. Spanish is obviously not my first language. To host a writing retreat at his private manor off the coast of Maine, she jumps at the chance, particularly since she has an axe to grind with one of the invitees. The guest list? 6 thriller authors, all masters of deceit, misdirection, and mayhem. Confess the crimes, survive the tropes. Alastor and Mila have masterminded a week of games, trope-fueled riddles, and maybe a jump scare or two. The perfect cover for Mila to plot a murder of her own. But when a guest turns up dead, and it's not the murder she planned, Mila finds herself trapped in a different narrative altogether. One by one, you'll lose your turn. And with a storm isolating the island and the body count rising, Mila must outwit a killer who knows literally every trick in the book until only one of us remains.
Mm.
Duh.
Yeah. I mean, I was a sucker from the very beginning, just because of the clue parts. It's basically the game of Clue. And she even has, I'm going to show this and hopefully it'll show up,
Oh
this
yeah.
map of like, it's like a typical Clue board, but then it's a map of the mansion and where everything happens, which I just found to be absolutely delightful. So what would you say is the story question given?
Mm.
Because I mean, I have some opinions, but I'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah, I literally in my notes I have story question maybe. So who it really is, J.R. Alastor, and what the hell does
Uh-huh.
he want with all of these people?
Right.
The mysterious, renowned anonymous author, and we find out very, very quickly. I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. I'm gonna
No,
stop.
no, we're freeform discussion.
Okay, well, freeform just we find out very, very early in the book that like no one has actually really ever even seen this person. Like never done book signings, never done any interviews where anyone has seen their face or anything like that. So when it says, renowned anonymous author, they really are anonymous. If I lapse into he by accident, like I shouldn't. I'm going to try to stay gender neutral because we have no clue. We really don't. Although I think they use he to refer to him in the book.
They do, and it's again, spoiler alert. This person does not end up being a man, it ends up being a woman in the end, and it was a delightful twist. And the way that all of the characters make assumptions, because we're not making assumptions from the one person who seems to know but is not really sure the
Hmm.
gender of the person, it's okay because it's not a lie to the reader, right? Like it's an assumption made in dialogue or from receiving from, another POV. And I thought it worked really, really well.
Yeah, though now that I think about it, Mila, who is our sort of, I would say our protagonist, yes,
Absolutely. Yeah.
um, Mila has actually talked to them, him, her, them on the phone, I think, right? There's a lot of exchanging of text messages, but I believe they've talked maybe once or twice. Um,
That's a great
Now I'm
question.
trying to
Andy, so,
remember.
so sorry if we screw this up.
I
You
know.
wrote a very complicated novel.
Yes.
When I was going through and doing my notes on this, I was like, I had to start doing just a chapter by chapter summary to try to keep track of like what people assumed when, which is a delight. It made me fall in love with it all over again. My recollection is that it was just text messages. It
You're
wasn't an
probably right.
email,
Yeah, you're
but
probably right. And it's not a huge thing. I think the important point is like
yeah,
what Sam said is that it's not a misguided assumption. It's not a cheat assumption that is made about the gender because it's an earned assumption and that
yeah.
keeps it from feeling like, oh, okay, yep, like when it's actually revealed, we don't feel like, oh, that was, where did that come from?
Totally. Yeah. And I have in my notes that Mila thinks that Ash might be Alistair at one point,
Mhm.
and then she realizes that it's Cassandra at the end. Yeah. What a delight. Okay, we'll get into all of that.
Yes.
So my note for what the story question was who will survive?
Mm.
Which, I think works, but it's also like who is behind the murders? Like who is this person? Why did they want to be doing this? Um, and I think that the fact that there are multiple sort of circling around the same theme story questions was really interesting and part of the reason that this book was really fun.
I mean, there were so many layers to it, I think, and like I like not again, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here, but in trying to figure out what the emotional aha moments were, I actually
Yes,
found I think a few of them that I
I
was
did
like, oh,
too.
I could
Yeah.
argue about, not argue, but like we could make an argument around some of these. So we'll get there, but I just like that's just a testament to the layers that I think are woven into this, like
Yes.
structurally that you can have more than one of these payoff moments. You don't have to when you're writing it, but like the fact that she managed to do so
Hmm.
successfully, I think just like I said, is a testament to the structure and how well it works.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, okay, an inciting incident. This one I
Mhm.
couldn't decide. I think it could be that the inciting incident is literally just them arriving on the island because they have all chosen to be there, but that's also early for a proper inciting incident.
Mhm.
And so then I thought maybe it was when, they find the first body, but that's pretty late. And so curious to hear what you think.
I had one of those moments where I was like, is this an off-screen inciting incident?
Right.
In that it really is like, because what is the thing that sets it in motion inevitably? And it, in my mind, it could arguably be when they receive the invitation.
Totally.
slash
Yeah.
slash decide to go, because that is the thing that sets all of this in motion. It's the thing that they can't once they've decided and they've stepped on the plane and also the boat, which is why that was my other one too, is like, well, when they get on the boat to go to the
Hmm.
island, that's like their point of no return, right? Even more than they realize at that
Right.
moment. They
Exactly.
really are not getting off this island. So yeah, I think there's an argument to be made for both of them. And also, like you said, I mean, when they find the first body, that also is like it's a bit of a turning point moment. But it didn't necessarily quite meet the. I think it was a little bit later than normal. Although we have discussed other books where that works just fine. Um, but it felt like the inevitability had already been set in motion before that. I think
I
that's where
agree.
I was like, oh, that coupled with where it actually happened felt like maybe not the inciting incident.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And it's one of these things where, the inciting incident I would define as the reason that somebody enters into the story. They make a choice, they have agency, right? And so from Mila's perspective, it actually goes all the way back to
Yeah.
her setting up this entire thing, and it's totally off screen, which normally would not be something that would quote unquote work, like in the classic wisdom of how to write a thriller. But with this, it totally does, right? Like you're playing into the trope of the locked room clue mystery. And of course, they will all have been invited there and they're stuck there, and then the story enters. And I think that if you'd gone back and started the story and given us 30 pages of background, it wouldn't work as well.
Yeah,
So
I'd be really curious to know if, like many writers, myself included, when she was drafting, did Andy like run into this of like, yeah, did she write those 30 pages
I'm
and
sure she
then
did.
realize like, yeah, you know what? I don't need all of this, right? Like, let's just get into the moment of them stepping off the dock onto the boat. Um, that wouldn't surprise me because I think that would be a very, very normal thing for a writer to do as you're working through
Totally.
all of this kind of story, like unraveling your story structure in your head. So that would be
Yeah.
interesting to know.
And interestingly, the whole crux of why Mila is so angry and wants to plan this entire thing anyway is a part of the major twist in the story. So it couldn't have been revealed. Like, and it's one of these things
Right.
where it's a secret from the reader, but Mila makes no secret when she's talking to herself in her interiority about the fact that she has this reason. We just don't know who it's about or what her goals are exactly. We just know that she's angry and that this person has stolen something very important from her. And I thought that was really well done too. Like when I first started reading, I was a little frustrated because I was like, well, I want to know why you're so mad. But like, what's driving you? But then you kind of sink into it and it just worked, right? Like the mystery of who she's so mad at in this cast of characters was also a twist in of itself because we don't
Mhm.
know what the truth is until it's revealed.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think I kind of got at relatively early on. Like there were clues there where I was like, oh, someone stole her work, right? She's
yeah,
she's a writer amidst writers, and somebody stole her work. But like all of the detail around that and exactly how it happened, and then the twist around it, like that all worked really well. And I agree. I think at first I was like, oh no, like just freaking tell me.
yeah,
But there was so many other things going on that I wanted to know. Like there's so many questions that she sets up
so many questions.
that it feels like if that were the only thing we were focused on the whole time, we would be frustrated.
Oh,
But
very good point. Yeah,
as soon as something goes awry, as soon as we find out that Mila is not in control of what's going
right.
on,
Oh my
that just
God. Yeah.
opens up this huge, like, all sorts of story questions about like, well, what is going on and who is pulling all of the strings? Is it one person? Who's
Yeah.
doing what? Why? Just it really unfolds everything. So,
Yeah. And I'm just now thinking about similar to House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. If anyone's not watched that deep dive, we were getting very into tropes with that because the problem with tropes is that the reader can predict what happens. And Andy Pliego did the exact same thing with this, right? Like we're entering into it thinking like, oh, it's going to be a classic murder mystery, body on the first page, lights out, like who did it, and everyone, the murderer is on the island kind of thing. And they are, but it's not in the way that we think. And I think that that worked so well. And, playing with the game aspects of it too, like there's a game within a game here. And
there's so
yeah,
many layers to things. And we haven't talked yet about it, and this is probably a great seg into it. I think this is writer catnip, this book,
yes,
because they're all a bunch of writers. It's playing with all these things that we all are familiar with as writers, or we will become familiar with the more, that we work on our craft. And like the number of times that she talks about like, well, your character arc isn't complete here, or like, oh, just really like putting up the neon sign to say like, look what I'm doing here, but like in a very clever and enjoyable way. It's not that you have to be a writer to enjoy this, but like if you're a writer and you don't, what are you
yeah, I mean,
doing?
exactly. So agreed. And that book that they're quoting from throughout, like
Yeah,
Alistair's book, uh, I want to read that. It was like
I
the
know. Well,
Yeah,
actually,
I'm
we haven't read the first chapter, which is an excerpt from the book. So
okay.
we
Okay.
probably should do that.
Let's dive into the first chapter. So this is the fake book that's referenced in this book about, and it's called An Excerpt from The Ink in Your Veins on Writing Fear, which again, I want to read,
Yeah,
by J.R. Alistair. Introduction. If you were to take story, capital S, strap it down onto your dining room table and slide a scalpel through its chest, you would find the lifeblood is theme. It causes story's cold corpse to breathe, to reach through the sheets of dead trees and puncture your skin, fastening long clawed fingers around your heart. Great imagery.
right.
Let me ask you this. Why do we love the thrill? How on earth have my grisly book sold so many copies worldwide? Abound in gratitude, by the way, in quotes, or I'm sorry, in parentheses. And why is The Haunting of Hill House still regarded as one of the greatest stories of all time? My theory is that the monster in the house, the killer in the dark, reflects ourselves. That in reading about a house morphing into a twisted mirror of a young woman's soul, we feel as though we, too, have looked ourselves in the eye. Like the Greeks who witnessed plays of great tragedy and comedy to experience the emotion, we, too, hunger for confrontation of our innermost secrets. We've all done things in the dark, after all. Such a good line.
Mm.
Only also like the Greeks, we want to experience this in a safe environment. We don't want to face ourselves, not really. We just want to feel like we have to sample the sting of guilt, the relief of catharsis, and to move along as if nothing happened. By the way, Andy, I apologize for stumbling over my words. Fest was last week and I'm exhausted. So here we are. Writing is a kind of beautiful madness. It is slitting yourself open, bleeding your soul onto the page in that paradoxical mask of vulnerability perhaps only a writer can achieve. And writing fear requires the greatest vulnerability of all, a willingness to face your demons and set them free. But where do these demons come from, I wonder? Could they flow from a great burden, an unpardonable guilt, as so many of our protagonists shoulder? I think perhaps each of you knows what I'm referring to, and if you don't, well, over the course of this book, we shall all get rather well acquainted, shall we? I'm dying to begin. And then it gets into the dinner party, and we meet Rodrigo, which is not our protagonist.
Correct.
Another interesting choice. So, well done. Yeah.
I mean, all of that, like I'm so glad you paused at a couple points there because, like, the imagery, we talk about how I love all of that, and I know I'm not the only one, but that first line, slide a scalpel through its chest, you would find the lifeblood is theme. First of all, amazing and delightful imagery for writing about fear and horror and mystery and thriller and all that good stuff. But also, as any writer, I think would say the lifeblood is theme. Like, yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's what we talk all the time about that with our clients. So, like on a few different levels, this was just really delicious.
It was really delicious. And just reading this, I mean, Haunting of Hill House is the twisted mirror of a young woman's soul, but this book is also
Hmm.
about a young woman getting her comeuppance and making some choices and realizing that they weren't the choices she wanted. And there's some strong foreshadowing there that we don't even we just think, this person's referring to The Haunting of Hill House. We don't realize it also refers to this book. So intentional or not, Andy Pliego, well done. Loved it.
Hat tip.
Hat tip. Okay, so we talked about story question, we talked about inciting incident. Let's go through the twists really quickly, and then I would love to talk about the emotional arcs in this one because they were really fun. So the midpoint twist, when I looked up on my Kindle, 53% was roughly where it was because we had some, Kindle is always a little hard with percentages because it
Right.
counts the table of contents and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's either when we learn that Ashton is the child murderer and
Hmm.
the surviving the night trope, or it's the Mila chapter where she is likely going to be turned in immediately before that is Ashton thinking Mila might be Alastor, right? So we have all these different POVs and it's not completely equal. It followed the way the story needed to be told, quite honestly, which I think is really difficult to plan out. I
Absolutely.
imagine this book went through so many drafts to try to figure out the best possible way of telling this.
Hmm.
But Mila is our core theme person. And so I think her midpoint was when she thinks she's going to be turned in. And so it kind of changes things for her. It's like, well, up or out, you know?
Yep.
What do you
Yeah,
think?
I agree with that, and I also did have that Ashton is a cop and the child murderer or something
Yeah.
implied. So that was where, and again, I was at about 47%. I'm kind of keeping an eye out as I go. So I start looking for like where are those moments. But I like that's a very good point about like Ashton not being our protagonist.
Yeah,
That twist. I mean, it certainly counts as a great twist, but does it count as the midpoint twist? Because it's not really directly involving Mila. So yeah,
right.
it's an interesting question.
Well, and maybe similar to CJ Tudor's The Drift, like each of
Mm,
the main POVs, if we were to look back and do an even deeper dive on each of them, which I did not do, because
yeah,
again, there was so much to keep track of in this book. I think we might find that each of them had their own turning point
yeah.
roughly in the middle of the book, But again, the chapters were not even, depending on who was talking, it just we sort of hopped around, similar to Clue, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
really fun. What a
It
fun
was
book.
really fun. And actually,
Yeah.
that is an interesting because one of the people we end up with at the end, since we've already spoiled things like, and I won't, well, I will. Spoiler, another spoiler warning. Violet, we don't get Violet's POV until quite a ways into the book.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that's interesting that it did was say, okay, like, well, what does Violet have to hide? Is she the person who's pulling some strings or all the strings or everything? I mean, but at the same time, given the kind of book that like that's too obvious, it wouldn't be that, and it
Totally.
wasn't. But it was really interesting that like that she sort of reserved some POVs for later, right? We were immediately in Rodrigo's, but he's the first to die.
Hmm.
Um, then like people like Fletcher, we didn't get until probably part of the way through it, like maybe 30%, 40%, we start getting into his POV. So it's
Yeah.
interesting the way she structured that too, of kind of doling it out and it also gave you the idea of like, oh, if we're like lapsing into yours, like we have a pretty good idea Mila's going to be with us the whole time since we've
Yeah.
her as our protagonist, but like if I'm getting into your POV for the first time, does that mean like your turn is coming, buddy? Like you're on the chopping block.
Totally. Totally. And I think, I mean, this is just off the top of my head recollection, but I think it probably went like Mila had the most chapters, then Ashton, out, no, Ash, yeah.
Ashton, yeah.
Ash. Then I actually don't know who would come next.
Yeah, maybe because Rodrigo and Cassandra, we think, are dead. Uh,
Hmm.
but then we find out later that only one of them is truly dead. So they're sort of cut off from the get-go because like, hey, they're not supposed to be around anymore. And then
Right.
we don't get Violet again till towards the end. So maybe it is Fletcher.
Yeah, maybe Fletcher, but I feel like there was relatively little from each of them. And the cast
Um,
itself is, I had a mild complaint in my own head because I kept confusing Ash and Alistair, but I think that that's just because the A names, for
yeah,
whatever, I'm one of
I
these
that
readers
was
who just like, if I have two characters with the first initial, it confuses me.
Yeah, no, I kind of, and I think I must be the same kind of reader too, because that was like my one little quibble too. I was like, oh, these names are like, they're not close when you say them out loud.
No,
It's like, they're not close at all. But just there is something about like that clue, probably that we're trying to read and our brains are filling in things. So when they see A,
totally.
we automatically just go, oh, it's that person. And when you have them like that, it just, but it was a
Yeah.
small thing, like I said,
It
the
was a super small thing and
tiniest
it
of quibbles.
yes. And I mean, but the cast, my point of bringing this up was the cast of characters was on the larger side, right? We had quite a few people to keep track of, but aside from me, my own problem confusing the A names, I didn't get confused as to who anybody else was, and I thought that was very masterfully done looking back. Like we know that Mila is working as the event manager, and then she has two helpers. And then the rest of the cast is kind of introduced from her POV and, how she views them. And they all kind of fit into tropes themselves, right? We have like the over the top, personalities, and we've
Oh.
got nutty professor types, and we've got the cop, and, everyone writes these like horrible murder books. And so, I mean, honestly, it sounds fun until people start dying, but um,
And in the ways that like they themselves have written, which was also just a very like lovely little touch.
it
Because then
was.
they're trying to figure out, oh well, if I'm next, which one of my books, like
Exactly.
how are they going to kill me? Would it be this death scene or this death scene? Really fun. But I
Really
do think
fun.
she did a nice job when we're switching to those more minor POVs, but everybody was in first person POV too, and that is
Yeah.
a hard thing to do. But I think she did a really nice job giving us some distinction with like I felt like Cassandra's voice was very clear,
Mm-hmm.
Fletcher's voice was very clear, Mila's voice was very clear. So like I wasn't mixing anybody up when we
I
were
wasn't
in
either.
their POVs. And yes, she did the thing which is not at all a cheat. It's a smart thing to do of putting the person's name when you're
Yeah.
in your POV at the top of the chapter. Thank you as a reader. Like I like that orientation. But also there were like the way that Cassandra talked was so big and over the top and everything was like, oh, delicious and exquisite and just like you could hear her voice. It
Mm-hmm.
really fit with her personality. Same thing with Fletcher.
Yeah.
He was British or pretending to be.
Yeah.
Couldn't exactly know. He was one of those, people that we've all encountered in a writing class or a workshop where you're just like, "Arr."
Absolutely.
Oh,
All right. So let's talk
sorry, I got
about
us away from twists.
no, I love talking about this with you. So then we have climactic twist and then final twist. So the final twist was obviously like well, not obviously. Mila and Violet end up being co-authors, and we have this like sort of forced like, oh, well, I'm gonna get the credit too because you stole this from me, and so now you have to admit that I was your silent partner and all of that. And I didn't see that coming. It wasn't exactly a classic twist and then it was a reveal of something like the mastermind. But it was definitely something I didn't expect, and it totally works, right? It's the only possible conclusion
Mm,
unless people were going to die. But I think that like we're never going to we're never going to throw anyone under the bus because the only three people who would be affected are us. That
hmm.
was also a really good line at the end.
Yeah.
Um,
That interview was hilarious
Hilarious. Yeah.
because Violet keeps trying to go there and Mila keeps like kind of reining her back in and knowing what we know because we've seen the entire story unfold.
Yeah.
Like you're just walking right up to that edge and then pulling back and walking up and pulling back. And I was just like, oh my God. I mean, the two of you clearly have to work together, because you do, but at the same time, like
Yeah, it was
trying to
very,
wrangle each
very,
other or one trying to wrangle the other must just be an interesting affair.
very, very well done. Um,
I actually
and
have a question for you.
yeah,
So when I hit the afterword,
yeah.
a sort of an interesting thing happened on my Kindle. Like I hit the last chapter, or it wasn't the last chapter, but I hit the afterword, and then I had the thing that like happens on my Kindle where like the credits come up. It was like, whoop, like
Oh, interesting.
here's like your next read or whatever it is that the Kindle does. And I knew there was more, so I like, closed that and just kept reading. But I was like, it almost made it feel like the afterword, the interview, and then I think there was a whole nother chapter in there too. Felt like those scenes that you see that happen in the credits of after the movie. That
Totally.
you don't know that this is coming, like you better just stay in your seat. And it's always like sort of extra and delicious. But I
I
guess
wonder
that
if they did that
just
on
happened on
purpose.
mine. Yeah,
No, I don't remember because Kindle depends on the app you're using if you're on your Kindle or on your phone app. But yeah, that would shock me if they did that on purpose, you know?
it was a little too much of the story. Like it could have ended there and there wouldn't have been any, like I wouldn't have been mad. Everything had been revealed, but I feel like
Right.
there was still some deliciousness. Like that interview, I was just laughing the whole
Yeah, it
time.
was too. It
Thought
was
it was
really
so
good.
funny. And I think, I wouldn't have been, like I said, I wouldn't have been mad. All the questions had been answered. I knew what had happened, but
Yeah.
it was a really delicious piece of of the book to potentially, if someone thinks, oh, that's the end, and then they just kept going.
Yeah. Yeah, good
Interesting.
point. I don't know. The climactic twist, again, climactic twist answers the story question. If we're going with the story question of who is behind everything, like who is J.R. Allister, we learn that Cassandra is at about 90%,
Mm.
which is worked really well.
Hmm.
But, the the twist that Olivia is a serial killer was delightful. I was reading that was at that point, like I always read right before I go to bed. I love reading all these scary books right then. And I was trying to go to sleep, but I couldn't put it down. And then I got to the point where it was like, she's in there with a machete. And I was like, well, no, I'm not. Now we're just in it for the next hour. And it was really fun. So I loved that too. And the Olivia revealed as serial killer was like 81%. Um,
At the time, I thought that was the climactic
I
twist.
thought it was too. And then I realized like, no, she's,
Yeah.
we need to know who Alistair is. And so that's, you know, yeah. But the way that we just sort of flowed with all these events, like the climactic scene lasted for quite a while, like 15% of the book, if I was doing my math right.
Oh,
And
wow.
we
I don't
start
quite
it with
remember
the serial killer reveal, because that's kind of when shit hits the fan.
that. Right.
And then we have people locking each other in, and then, Mila confronting Cassandra and Cassandra saving her. And like, there was some really good
And
emotional
Ash
aha
is
moments.
like strapped to the wheelchair
Ash is drowning. Yeah.
at the end of the dock, and we find out really what happened, what he did, which wasn't
Yes.
an accidental kind of thing. I mean, it was, but it really wasn't. Um, so yeah, there was a
Yeah.
lot. There were a lot of reveals that happened, or like, a lot of twists and a lot of reveals that were happening. And often I find like if all of this stuff happens in the last 20% of the manuscript, if I see that in the client's work, sometimes I'll be like, oh, I think
Mhm.
we saved too much for the end, and we need to look at how we're like laying all of this out, because it can feel like slow burn to like throwing everything at you. But I didn't necessarily
Totally.
get that sense in this. Like it felt just like up until, maybe that 90% when we really get Alistair, who Alistair really is, Cassandra,
Hmm.
revealed, that it was just every reveal opened up another question that we wanted answered. And so maybe that's
Yeah.
why it didn't quite feel so like, I'm just throwing the kitchen sink at you right now. Um,
Well, and also we had a high enough body count, honestly, that it
mhm,
kept the interest high. It wasn't like we
right.
had a body at the beginning and then nothing forever. Like we killed off the two helpers and we had fake people, people fake dying and like,
Yeah.
you
Excellent
know,
point.
and all the things about people messing with each other overnight and like the video blinking out. And it just, there was, again, to your point you said earlier, like that just everything opens up a new question. Like it just kept me very entertained. It was just like, well, I need to know, so I'm going to keep reading. And I think that's a lesson we can all take away too. Like you never want to solve everything but the story question. You always want to be opening up like new things. And, some of it was, there actually weren't that many red herrings in here because it turns out Cassandra was behind everything and she had very good reason to be. She was torturing them all, but except for Mila.
Yeah. No, I was thinking about like, well, what are like the some of the other reveals, and like where that like would, but no, there really weren't, because it was just the layers of like these story questions, finding
Yeah.
it wasn't just as simple as Alastor being the puppet master.
No,
There
which
were
we
other
knew
people
from the
manipulating
beginning.
things. Right.
Yeah. And that's interesting too. Like we knew who the mastermind villain was from page one because we know that Mila was working for Alistair. And then when people start dying, it was like, oh, well, this person's gonna go after all of us and we're all in danger and then we can't leave. But so then the question becomes, who are they? Which it was very masterfully unfolded because we suspect everybody throughout the entire thing.
Well, how fun was that when, when they open up the clue board, which has been custom made for them, and not only is it all of the characters, but all of their professions, and then each of the sins, as they were calling them, like drug dealer, poisoner, child murderer, it's like,
Right.
and they're trying to, fit the slots into each person, who is which person. And of course, some people are more willing to sort of reveal their secrets than others, but no one really wants to come clean. And it set that in motion of like, oh, now we know, we readers know there is someone attached to each of these terrible things.
Totally.
And I have lists in my notes of like,
Me too.
Olivia, like serial killer question mark, poisoner question mark. Like it's just all the different points where you think, oh, she's pointing you to think that this person has done this thing. And honestly, like I never got to Olivia as a serial killer until I think that moment, exactly where she wanted me to get to it. It
Exactly.
was
I
like,
didn't
oh,
either.
there's the axe taped to the chair.
It was really well done. It was
Yeah,
really well done.
very, very fun. Very fun.
Yeah. Okay, and then the emotional arcs, let's talk about those because
Mm.
those were really fun in this one. And it was sort of we care a lot about Mila, even though she's obviously like planning these people's murders a little bit. We're on her side, which is interesting. And I think, a testament to the interiority of Mila and being like, this person is an underdog. They have had things taken away from them. They would be, she would be in this group of people had this not happened to her. But then that feeling of like it just getting very out of control, and then she becomes a potential victim.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I wrote down what I think the exact moment was, but I'm curious to hear what you think.
So this is where, like, again, I had more than one. So my
Yeah.
first one was at the first one that I pegged was at 86%, where I said when Violet and Mila come clean to each other and they both feel like this catharsis
Yeah.
moment where they're like, whew, okay, we've acknowledged like what's going on here. And so,
Right.
and the other one that I had
Well,
was,
and then she
oh,
saves
sorry.
Violet, right? Like Mila saves Violet from she lets her out.
Yes, so that I think was my
Yeah.
other one. Oh no, actually, but it was before that. Well, it must have been right around the same time at 87%. I had, and this is why I was a little like, oh, there's multiple ones going on here because
Yeah.
this one I had pegged to Violet because we were in her POV. She's not the protagonist, but she had a moment where she gets over her fear and gets into the confessional, which she has to do if she is going to save herself and Mila. But like
Right.
it was in the way it was framed and it successfully was that it was a sacrificial decision. She
Mm-hmm.
could have just taken off and tried to figure out how to get herself out and let Mila, die in whatever horrible way. Um,
Yeah.
but she said, like, nope, I'm getting over like this is, and that's when we find out too that a huge fear of hers is like she was robbed and it
Yeah.
was like that all happened when she was in the closet, so that's why she does not want to get into this dark and closed space because it's bringing all that trauma right back to
Totally.
her. um so that's where like I had pegged a couple of them there. What else did you have, and or do you agree with any of
I
them?
agree completely. Yeah, I had the emo aha for Mila was when she realizes only one of them can leave, and so she saves Violet and lets Violet know, like, you have to lock me in to escape. Go do it. Like, go live this life that you have stolen from us, right? And but then because if we keep going, then Cassandra comes in and is like, uh, we learn that Mila is burning and Cassandra's locked in next to her, and we learn that no mother should ever have to bury her child, which is a reference to Ash. Um, and then Violet saves Ash, and then we have this other emotional aha for Cassandra, where she says, "Perhaps this wasn't a test for you, perhaps it was one for me."
Yes.
And so Cassandra then like takes the fall and releases Mila out into the world in the same way that Mila released Violet. And instead of it feeling sort of like that could have felt sort of like repetitious, because it's
Mhm.
the exact same thing, but instead it felt really powerful because Cassandra is Alistair and, she has gotten what she wanted. She has killed all the people that took something from her, and now she's making it right by releasing Mila and, falling on her sword, basically. I
And I
thought it worked
thought
really
back
well.
to, yeah, I totally agree. And I thought back to, I think it was in Cassandra's first chapter, it might have been her second POV chapter, where she alludes to the fact like she's gotten these prescriptions and she didn't refill her prescriptions before she came
Hmm.
to the island. And she's like, well, that's it. Like this, I'm just gonna have to make do. And there was something else she said that didn't stick back in my mind quite so well, but she's alluding to the fact like this is her sort of last stand, her last moment. So we interpret it in those moments as like she's kind of resigned, like she doesn't want to die, but she's kind of resigned to like, well, I'm gonna die
Right.
soon, so like if it's here, well,
Might as well.
and we think it's just like she's kind of leaning into the spirit of the weekend or something. Like that's a terrible way to put it, but you know what, we don't, that does
Yeah.
not in that moment say, oh hey, she's Alistar. So but it does nod to it for sure when you look back on it. So
Yeah. Yeah, I just really liked it. When I first picked it up, I was expecting one thing and then we got into it and it sort of morphed into what my expectations were. And then I was just like, send me on this ride. And then I did not predict hardly any of the end. I found it very satisfying and fun. And my attention was held throughout the entire book, which I think is tough with this complicated of a story and, this many characters and this many motivations. And yeah, I liked it.
I really like, like I said, it for me it was sort of it scratched the writer itch, like it's
Yeah.
writer catnip that way, like so many fun nods to the work that we do every day and love that. But also just again, I think that these thrillers that we really find that we enjoy, not all of them. You can have a simple plot and absolutely still make it work and have it be a page turner, but a lot of these have these just fascinating layers to them.
Hmm.
And they're structured and built in such a way that you don't see things coming. And it's a testament to the skill and the craft that goes into like making these stories and making them so successful. And I was expecting same thing. I was expecting one thing, and this was not what I expected at all. And I'm still like, that's not a knock on it. That's a
It's really cool.
compliment.
Yeah. And by the way, this was her fictional debut. I don't know if she's written anything else, but really just knocked it out of the park. So you just, yeah, very, very cool.
Kudos.
Very, yes, and extreme. Um, Anything else you want to add? Or shall we
No,
just say thank you, Andy Pliego, for writing this book? We appreciate you.
yes, yes, I think that's exactly right. Good place to end it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming to another Shadows and Secrets deep dive. Thank you for listening to people who are listening. And you can find out more about both the society and our retreats at shadowsandsecrets.com.
Nailed it.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody.